I spent 24 hours cooking for my son's anniversary party only to hear him joke, "Well, feed it to the dogs." I quietly packed every dish and walked out. Hours later, what happened made everyone's jaw drop. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The carrots surrendered their skins under my knife with the same resignation I'd cultivated over 37 years of marriage. 6 o'clock in the morning and I was already 3 hours deep into prep work for Carl's anniversary party. 15 years of marriage to that woman who'd never once called me by name, only Carl's mother in that tone that suggested I was some inconvenient relative who'd overstayed her welcome. Steam rose from the industrial-sized pot where I'd been simmering beef bones since midnight. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and thyme, like the restaurant I'd never opened, like dreams deferred until they calcified into duty. My back ached from leaning over cutting boards. But I kept working. After Raymond died 2 years ago, cooking had become my language. The only way I still knew how to say I love you to a family that seemed to have forgotten I existed, except when they needed something. The guest list had grown from 15 to 43. Each edition delivered via text message from Mary Ill, my daughter-in-law, as casual as ordering groceries. Oh, and we invited the Hendersons and Mariel's book club, and Carl's old college buddies. Never. Would you mind? Or is that possible? Just the assumption that I would handle it, that I was some inexhaustible well of maternal service. Calculated the costs myself. $867 for ingredients. My Social Security check barely stretched to cover it. But I'd used the money anyway. The money I'd been saving for that small apartment across town, the one with the view of the park where I could sit on my own porch without feeling like an intruder. In my own son's house. The lamb shoulder went into the oven at 6:30. Portobello mushrooms followed at 7. By 8 I had 3 desserts cooling and was whisking Hollands for the asparagus. My hands moved with the muscle memory of decades. The way I'd cooked for Raymond's business dinners, for Carl's graduation party, for every milestone that mattered to everyone but me. "Morning, Mum." Carl shuffled into the kitchen in his pajamas, hair still pressed flat on one side. At 42, he still had that sleepy boy look that used to make my heart squeeze with tenderness. Now it just made me tired. "Coffee's ready," I said, not looking up from the sauce. He poured himself a mug and leaned against the counter, surveying the controlled chaos of my workspace. "Smells incredible in here. You've been up all night since midnight. You didn't have to go crazy, Mom." Mariel ordered some appetizers from that place downtown. I stopped whisking. "She what? Just some basics. Cheese and crackers, stuff like that to supplement." To supplement. As if everything I'd been preparing was just filler. Just background noise to the real food. Hollandaise broke, separating into yellow pools of disappointment. "I've been cooking for 43 people, Carl. I know, and it's amazing." Mariel just wanted to make sure we had enough. He sipped his coffee, oblivious to the way my chest was tightening. "She's stressed about the whole thing. You know how she gets about entertaining. How she gets as if Mariel had ever cooked a meal for more than 4 people in her life. As if she had any idea what it meant to plan a menu for 43, to coordinate cooking times, to stretch a budget that was already pulled thin. I calculated portions. "Carl, I've been doing this longer than Miles been alive." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't pull them back. He looked at me with that expression I'd been seeing more often lately. Mild surprise. as if he'd forgotten I was capable of having opinions about anything. "Okay, Mom. Whatever you think is best. Whatever I think is best." The words that meant he wasn't listening. Wasn't really considering what I'd said. Smoothing over the conversation like Mariel did when she wanted me to stop talking. After he left, I stood alone in the kitchen that would soon be full of people who would eat my food and compliment Meryl on the party. The lamb was browning, filling the air with the smell of rosemary and garlic. I'd been cooking since I was 12 years old since my own mother died, and I'd become responsible for feeding my father and brothers. 65 years old and I was still feeding everyone but myself. The morning dissolved into a blur of final preparations. The twice-baked potatoes went into the second oven. The chocolate mousse was plated and chilled. I changed into the purple dress Mariel had suggested, something that won't show stains in case you're serving, and pinned my gray hair back with the silver clasp Raymond had given me for our 20th anniversary. People began arriving at 4. I recognized maybe half of them: Carl's friends from work, Mariel's sister, and her husband, a few neighbors. The rest were strangers who would eat my food and never know my name. I watched from the kitchen as Mariel glided through the living room in her red dress, accepting compliments on the beautiful party, the wonderful decorations, the amazing food. "The lamb is incredible," I heard someone say to her as I refilled the serving platter. "Thank you so much," Mariel replied as if she'd been the one standing over a hot stove since midnight. "We really wanted to make this special." I carried the fresh platter to the dining room, setting it next to the untouched store-bought cheese and crackers. Carl caught my eye and smiled. That grateful son smile that used to mean everything. Me. Now it felt like a tip for good service. The afternoon wore on. Refilled platters, washed dishes, kept the kitchen running while the party swirled around me. Every compliment about the food was directed to Mariel. Every thank you went to Carl. Became invisible in my own kitchen, a ghost haunting my own recipes. 6:30 As I was plating the last of the lamb, I heard Carl's voice from the dining room, louder than usual, bright with wine and celebration. "Well, if nobody wants seconds, we'll just feed it all to the dogs." Laughter erupted. Good-natured, wine-loosened laughter from people whose bellies were full of food I'd spent 24 hours preparing. Mariel's giggle rose above the rest, musical and carefree. "We'll feed it to the dogs." He stood, frozen in the kitchen, serving spoons suspended over the platter of perfectly sliced lamb. The words echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull like bullets. 24 hours, $867. Beef bones simmered since midnight. Hollandaise whisked by hand until my arm ached. Feed it to the dogs. The serving spoon clattered to the floor. My hands moved without conscious thought, reaching for the aluminum pans I'd brought the food in. The one stacked clean in the corner, waiting to go home empty as always. But not tonight. Began transferring food back into the pans. The lamb went first, then the roasted vegetables, the stuffed mushrooms, the potatoes. My movements were calm, methodical, like following a recipe I'd known all my life. Carl appeared in the doorway, probably coming to ask for more wine or clean glasses. "What are you doing?" I didn't look at him. The chocolate mousse went into its container. The remaining dinner rolls into their bag, taking the food home. "What? Why? You said you'd feed it to the dogs." "I don't want to deprive your guests of their entertainment." His face flushed red. "Mom, it was just joke. People were full. And I heard the dessert plates followed the mousse. Into the box. Everything I'd made, everything I'd paid for. Everything I'd poured myself into for 24 hours. Olaf. Going back where it came from. Mom, please don't be ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. I finally looked at him. This son I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for who thought my hurt. Feelings were ridiculous. You're right. It was ridiculous of me to think my cooking mattered enough not to be dog food. The kitchen had gone quiet. Through the doorway, I could see faces turned our way. The party atmosphere suddenly strained. Mariel appeared beside Carl. Her red dress bright as a warning flag. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice carrying that edge of annoyance it got when I didn't follow the script. "Nothing," Carl said quickly. "Mom's just I'm leaving." I stacked the last container in my arms, the weight of it's solid and satisfying. "Enjoy the rest of your party." I walked past them both. Past the dining room full of surprised faces. Past the living room where someone had turned the music back up to cover the awkwardness. No one tried to stop me. No one followed me to the car. As I loaded the food into my Honda, I could see them through the window. Carl and Mariel having what looked like an intense conversation, probably figuring out how to salvage the party without the woman who'd made it possible. My phone buzzed as I pulled out of the driveway. A text from Carl. "Mom, come back. We can talk about this." I deleted it without responding and drove toward home, toward the empty house where I'd eat my own cooking alone the way I'd been eating everything else for the past 2 years. The phone rang again as I turned onto Main Street. The display showed Kenneth's name, my nephew, my sister's boy, who'd somehow inherited our family's stubborn streak and my own dangerous relationship with food. I pulled over, hands still shaking from adrenaline and rage. "And Evelyn, thank God you answered." His voice cracked with desperation. "I'm completely screwed and I don't know what to do." Kenneth owned Riverside Bistro, the kind of place that survived on weekend events and wedding receptions. At 35, he'd poured everything into making it work after his divorce, including borrowing money from me that he'd been religiously paying back $20 at a time. "What's wrong, honey?" Chef Nolan called in sick 20 minutes ago. Projectile vomiting, fever, the whole nightmare. "And tonight, Jesus." "Aunt Evelyn, tonight I've got the Ford wedding reception, 80 people plated. Dinner service, the wedding party's already at the church." I could picture him pacing behind the bar, running his hands through his dark hair the way he'd done as a little boy when he'd broken something, and was trying to figure out how to fix it before anyone noticed. "What about your sous chef? Broke his wrist yesterday. I've got 2 line cooks who can barely handle appetizers and a dining room full of people expecting prime rib and salmon in 3 hours." His voice broke completely. "I'm going to have to cancel. The deposit alone will bankrupt me. Never mind the lawsuit. 5 years building this place and it's going to end because I can't feed 80 people." I sat in my car, engine running, surrounded by containers of food that was supposedly only good enough for dogs. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What's the menu?" I asked. "Aunt Evelyn, I can't ask you to what's the menu." Kenneth. Prime rib with red wine reduction. Herb-crusted salmon, roasted. Vegetables, Duchess potatoes, mixed greens with champagne vinaigrette, and chocolate raspberry tart. I did the math. In my head. My lamb could be reseasoned and sliced differently. The roasted vegetables would work perfectly. Potatoes could be repurposed. I had enough chocolate mousse for tart bases and raspberries were 20 minutes away at the grocery store. "I'm 15 minutes from your restaurant," I said. "Tart." Preheating your ovens, Aunt Evelyn. I can't let you, Kenneth. My voice came out harder than I intended, carrying all the authority I'd forgotten I possessed. I have enough food in my car to feed your entire party. Good food. Food that's been cooking since midnight. Food that apparently nobody wanted. Anyway, there was silence on the other end. And what happened? I'll tell you later. Right now we have a wedding to save. I hung up and pulled back onto the road, my hand steady on the wheel for the first time in hours. In my rear view mirror I could see the lights from Carl's house growing smaller. But I didn't feel the familiar tug of regret. Instead, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Useful. Riverside Bistro sat on the banks of Miller Creek, a converted Victorian house with windows that caught the evening light like amber. Kenneth was waiting in the parking lot when I arrived, still in his server's vest from the lunch shift. His face was pale with panic, but his eyes lit up when he saw me loading containers from my back seat. Jesus Christ, Aunt Evelyn, how much food did you make? Apparently too much. I handed him a pan of lamb. This can be your prime rib if we slice it right and make a red wine reduction. What do you have for stock? Everything. Nolan keeps the kitchen stocked like we're feeding an army. He followed me inside balancing containers. But I still don't understand. What later, I said, surveying his kitchen with the calculating eye of someone who'd been improvising meals for 6 decades. It was smaller than I was used to, but well organized, professional. Right now, show me your china and let's figure out presentation. For the next 3 hours, Kenneth's kitchen became my domain. I directed his 2-line cooks like a general commanding troops, reshaping my anniversary party disaster into a wedding feast. The lamb was sliced thin and fanned on plates. The red wine reduction glossy and perfect. My roasted vegetables were plated with garnishes that made them look intentional, elegant. The chocolate mousse was reformed into individual tarts with fresh raspberries I'd sent Kenneth to buy. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be essential to have people waiting for my decisions depending on my expertise. The line cook's kids, really maybe 25 years old, watched me work with something approaching awe. Where did you learn to plate like that? Asked Anya, the younger of the two, as I showed her how to arrange the salmon. 50 years of practice, I said, adjusting the angle of a sprig of dill, and a lot of dinner parties where presentation mattered more than I realized. The first plates went out at 7:30, exactly on schedule. Through the kitchen service window, I could see the dining room filled with people in their wedding best, laughing and toasting the happy couple. The bride was radiant in white lace. The groom couldn't stop smiling. And their families filled the room with a kind of joy that made you remember why celebrations mattered. The prime rib is incredible, one of the servers reported. Back loading clean plates. Table 6 wants to know who the chef is tonight. Kenneth appeared in the kitchen doorway, his panic replaced by something I hadn't seen in his eyes since he was little. Pride. They love it, he said. Everything. The Ford family specifically asked me to thank the chef. Mrs. Ford said it's the best wedding dinner she's ever had. I felt tears prick my eyes and blinked them back. When was the last time someone had complimented my cooking to my face? When had anyone ever asked to thank me specifically? It's just repurposed leftovers, I said, but even I could hear how false that sounded. Kenneth came closer, lowering his voice. This is restaurant quality food, Aunt Evelyn. Better than restaurant quality, and you turned it out in 3 hours with equipment you'd never used before. He paused. What the hell happened at Carl's party? Told him. while we plated desserts. The 24 hours of cooking. The dismissive comments. The casual assumption that I would handle everything while Mariel took credit. The final insult of hearing my work dismissed as dog food. Kenneth's face grew darker with each detail. He said finally. I'm sorry, but it is. You're one of the best cooks I know, and they treated you like hired help. I'm hired help. Paid. Hired help. Well. His voice was firm. Your family, and family doesn't treat family like that. The last plates went out at 9:15. The wedding party was loud with celebration, and the compliments kept flowing back to the kitchen. Mrs. Ford herself came back to thank me personally. An elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and laugh lines. You saved our daughter's wedding, she said, taking my hands in hers. Kenneth told me what happened. How you stepped in at the last moment. I don't know how to thank you. Just knowing it turned out well is enough, I said. But she shook her head. No, it's more than that. This food, it's exceptional. Where did you train? I didn't. I just learned by doing. She studied my face with the intensity of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading people. You should be running your own kitchen, she said. Finally, someone with your talent shouldn't be hidden away. After she left, I helped Kenneth clean up, falling into the familiar rhythm of post-service breakdown. It felt natural working in his kitchen, like something I'd been meant to do all along. I want to pay you, Kenneth said as we loaded the last of the dishes into the washer. Don't be ridiculous. Your family. So are Carl and Mariel apparently. But they don't seem to have any problem taking advantage of that. He pulled an envelope from the register. Mrs. Ford left this for you. Tip for the chef. Inside were 5 crisp $100 bills and a business card. Katie Ford, event coordinator. Ford Family Foundation. We host charity galas, fundraising dinners, corporate events. The note on the back read, call me. We need someone like you. I stared at the card at my name written in elegant script. Evelyn, executive chef for Ford wedding reception. Someone had written my name down, recognized my work as worth remembering. You know what this means? Kenneth asked, reading over my folder. Did know. It meant possibility. It meant recognition. Meant maybe at 65 years old, I didn't have to spend the rest of my life begging for scraps of respect from people who'd forgotten I was worth more than the services I provided. My phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from Carl, 2 from Mariel, and a string of text messages that started conciliatory and grew increasingly frustrated. The last one from Mariel made my jaw clench. Your dramatic exit ruined the party. Least you could do is answer your phone. I turned my phone off and slipped Katie Ford's card into my purse. Want a ride home? Kenneth asked. Actually, I said, looking around his kitchen one more time. I think I'll walk. I need to think. I didn't call Katie Ford for 3. Not because I didn't want to. The business card burned a hole in my purse like a lottery ticket I was afraid to scratch. But because I needed to understand what I was choosing between the old Evelyn who would have apologized to Carl and Mariel and gone back to cooking for people who didn't value her, or someone new, someone who might actually matter. Those 3 days were filled with silence from Carl's house. No calls asking me to pick up groceries. No requests to babysit Mariel's sister's kids. No casual assumptions that I would handle whatever needed handling. The quiet should have felt lonely. Instead, it felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. I spent Tuesday morning at the farmer's market. Something I hadn't done for myself in months. Usually my shopping was utilitarian. Whatever Carl's family needed, whatever fit the budget after I'd covered their expenses. But walking between the stalls with only my own preferences to consider felt revolutionary. Evelyn. A woman's voice made me turn from the tomato stand. Betsy Mitchell, Raymond's old secretary from the insurance office. I hadn't seen her since the funeral. Betsy, how are you? Better than you look, honey. She studied my face with the directness of someone who'd known me for 20 years. What's wrong? I almost said nothing. The automatic response I'd perfected. Instead, I told her about Saturday night, about the cooking, the dismissal, the walkout, and surprisingly about Kenneth's restaurant and Katie Ford's card. Betsy listened without interruption, nodding at the right moments, her expression growing darker as I described Carl's casual cruelty. That boy needs a reality check, she said finally. Raymond would be furious. Raymond's not here. No, but you are. And you're worth more than they're treating you like. She grabbed my arm. All that woman today. Betsy, I don't know if I can what? Cook. Honey, I ate your food at every company party for 15 years. You made that terrible office Christmas potluck something people actually looked forward to. Her grip tightened. What are you afraid of? I stared at the tomatoes. Perfect and red. And expensive. What was I afraid of? Failing or succeeding and having to admit how much of my life I'd wasted being small. I'm 65 years old. Eugenia Woods was 50 when she published her first cookbook. You've got time to build something that matters. Afternoon, I called Katie Ford. Evelyn, I was hoping I'd hear from you. Her voice carried genuine warmth. How soon can you meet? I have a proposition. We met Thursday at a coffee shop downtown. One of those renovated warehouse places with exposed brick and young people typing on laptops. Katie arrived precisely on time, wearing a tailored blazer and the kind of confidence that comes from years of getting things done. I've been thinking about Saturday night, she said, settling into the chair across from me. The way you handled that crisis, the quality of the food, the leadership in the kitchen. Need someone like you. She spread papers across the small table. Menus. Photos of events, financial projections that made my head spin. The Ford Foundation hosts 12 major events a year. Fundraising galas, donor dinners, corporate retreats. We've been using the same catering company for 5 years. Frankly, they've gotten complacent, expensive, unreliable, and the food is forgettable. I studied the photos. Elegant ballrooms, tables set with crystal and silver, women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos. The kind of events I'd only seen in magazines. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we start small. Trial run. We have a donor appreciation dinner next Friday. 40 people, intimate setting. If you can handle that, we'll discuss a more permanent arrangement. My palms were sweating. 40 donors who probably expected perfection, who moved in circles where mistakes got remembered, and reputations destroyed. I don't have a catering license or insurance or details we can work around. Kenneth's offered to let you use Riverside's kitchen and license for the initial events. As for the rest, she slid a check across the table. Consider this a signing bonus. Get whatever you need. The check was for $5,000. More money than I'd held in my hands since Raymond died. Katie, I can't. You can and you will. Because Saturday night wasn't a fluke. That was skill, experience, and talent. Finally getting the recognition it deserves. I drove home in a daze. The check tucked safely in my purse next to Katie's card. $5,000. Real job. Recognition. Respect. 65. I was being offered the chance to be someone other than Carl's convenient mother. The front door was unlocked when I got home, which meant someone was inside. I found Carl and Mel in my living room, sitting on Raymond's old couch like they owned the place, which technically they did. The house was still in Carl's name, something I'd agreed to after Raymond died for tax purposes and never bothered to change. "There you are," Mariel said, her voice tight with barely controlled irritation. "We've been calling. My phone was off for 3 days." Carl stood up and I could see the strain around his eyes. Let him worry for once. "Mom, we need to talk. I'm listening." Mariel shot him a look, then focused on me with the practiced smile she used when she wanted something. "We've been thinking about Saturday night and we realized there might have been some miscommunication. Miscommunication. As if I'd misheard his joke about dog food. Misunderstood the laughter that followed. "Carl didn't mean anything by that comment," she continued. "You know how he gets when he's had a few drinks. He feels terrible about the whole thing." I looked at my son, waiting for him to speak for himself. He shifted uncomfortably, hands shoved deep in his pockets like a sulky teenager. "I'm sorry, Mom. Came out wrong. The food was great. Everyone loved it. I was just joking around. About 24 hours of my labor, $800 of my money. The kind of effort that would have earned praise if anyone else had done it." "So we were thinking," Mariel jumped back in, "maybe we could do Sunday dinner this week. Make up for the misunderstanding. I could invite Mom and Dad, make it a real family thing. Of course. Sunday dinner that I would cook in my kitchen with my groceries while Mariel played hostess and took credit. The old pattern re-established, as if Saturday night had never happened. Busy Sunday. Busy." Carl's eyebrows shot up. "Doing what?" For a moment I considered lying. Making up something small and acceptable, a doctor's appointment or grocery shopping. Katie's check was still warm in my purse, and I was tired of making myself smaller to fit into their expectations. Working. Mariel laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Mom, you're retired." "Not anymore." I told them about Kenneth's restaurant, about the wedding reception, about Katie Ford's offer. With each detail, their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that looked uncomfortably like panic. "You can't be serious," Mariel said finally. "Mom, you're 65 years old. You can't start a catering business at 65. "Why not?" "Because," she gestured, vaguely searching for words. "Because it's crazy. Because you don't have experience with real professional cooking. 'Cause what if you fail? What if I fail?" The question that had kept me small for decades, that had made me settle for being useful instead of valued. "Then I'll fail," I said simply. "But at least I'll fail doing something that matters to me." Carl found his voice finally. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You don't need to work. Take care of you. Take care of me. By letting me live in a house that wasn't mine, cook food that wasn't appreciated, exist on the margins of their lives like a convenient appliance. Do you?" "Yes. Take care of me." "Course we do. You live here. Wintry. We include you in everything. You include me in the work. There's a difference." Mariel's mask slipped, revealing the irritation she'd been hiding. "So this is about Saturday night. You're throwing a tantrum because your feelings got hurt. A tantrum, as if my decades of service, my hurt, my decision to finally value myself meant no more than a child's fit of temper." "No," I said quietly. "This is about recognizing my worth, something you've apparently never learned to do. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken resentment. Carl looked like he wanted to argue, but Mariel grabbed his arm. "Fine," she said, standing up, with sharp, angry movements. "If you want to embarrass yourself chasing some fantasy career, that's your choice. Don't expect us to pick up the pieces when it falls apart." "I won't," I said. "I don't expect anything from you anymore." They left without another word, Mariel's heels clicking angrily across my hardwood floors. Through the window, I watched them get into Carl's car, their heads bent together in urgent conversation, probably planning their next approach, strategizing how to handle their suddenly inconvenient mother. I pulled Katie's check from my purse and stared at it. $5,000 in a chance to matter. It wasn't revenge exactly. It was something better. It was Saturday morning. I drove to the bank and deposited the check. Then I went shopping for the kind of clothes that said executive chef instead of helpful mother. By Sunday, when I should have been cooking dinner for Carl's family, I was instead planning menus for Katie Ford's donor appreciation dinner. My future spread across the kitchen table in neat professional lists. The Ford Foundation donor dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at the Riverside Country Club, a venue I'd only seen from the outside, driving past its manicured lawns and judging it as the kind of place that wouldn't have welcomed Raymond and me even when we had money. Now I was walking through its marble-floored entrance wearing chef's whites that actually fit, carrying knife rolls that belonged to me, preparing to cook for people who paid $25,000 a table to support local charities. "The kitchen is fully equipped," Katie said, leading me through corridors lined with oil paintings of men who'd been dead for decades. "The club's chef is handling the appetizer course, but the main event is yours. 40 guests, pan-seared duck breast with cherry gastry, wild mushroom risotto, roasted asparagus with lemon oil, and individual chocolate soulets." I'd practiced every component 3 times in Kenneth's kitchen, timing each element, until I could execute the entire menu with my eyes closed. The country club kitchen was intimidating, twice the size of anything I'd worked in, with equipment that probably cost more than I'd made in the last 5 years. But as I began my prep work, muscle memory took over. Dice the shallots, reduce the wine, check the oven temperature, the familiar rhythm of professional cooking, something I'd never experienced, but somehow knew how do. 2 hours before service, Katie introduced me to the kitchen staff I'd be working with. Experienced line cooks who'd been doing this longer than I'd been alive. I expected skepticism, maybe resentment at having to work under a 65-year-old woman they'd never heard of. Instead, I got professional courtesy and attention. "Chef Evelyn," the sous chef said, reviewing my prep list. "Do you want us to start breaking down the ducks?" Chef Evelyn. The title sent a thrill through me that I tried to keep off my face. "Please, and let's get the rosato base going. We'll finish it all a minute during service." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Orders came in, plates went out, and I found myself calling commands with an authority I didn't know I possessed. The kitchen responded like an orchestra to a conductor I'd never had the chance to be. "Duck, medium rare, table 7. I called, plating the breast with the precision Raymond used to reserve for insurance documents. The cherry gastry caught the light like liquid rubies. Through the service window I could see the dining room. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, women in elegant dresses, and men in dinner jackets. These people had options. They chose to be here. chose to eat food I'd prepared, chose to support causes they believed in. The contrast with Carl's anniversary party was stark. There I'd been invisible help. Here I was the reason for the evening's success. Chef, one of the servers appeared at the pass. "The gentleman at table 3 would like to speak with you." My stomach dropped. In my limited restaurant experience, customers who wanted to speak with the chef usually had complaints, but Katie appeared beside me, smiling. "Evelyn, there's someone I'd like you to meet." The man at table 3 was in his 70s, distinguished silver hair and the kind of relaxed confidence that comes with old money. He stood when we approached, extending his hand. "Mitchell Motto, he." I had to compliment the chef personally. That duck was exceptional. Restaurant quality doesn't do it justice. "Thank you." Managed. "I'm hosting a fundraiser next month for the Children's Hospital. 200 guests seated. Dinner. Would you be interested?" 200 guests. My hands started to shake and I clasped them behind my back. That's quite large." Katie tells me, "You're just starting out, but I've been to enough charity dinners to recognize real talent when I taste it." He smiled. "We'd provide full kitchen staff, complete creative control, and a fee that reflects the importance of the event." After he left, Katie and I sat in the empty dining room while the staff cleaned up. The evening had been flawless. Every plate returned clean, every compliment genuine, every moment exactly what I'd hoped professional cooking could be. So Katie asked, "How do you feel about Matt's offer?" Terrified, I admitted. 200 people is beyond anything I've ever attempted, but not beyond your capability. Tonight proved that. She poured wine from an open bottle the servers had left behind. "Evelyn, I've been running events for 15 years. I've worked with celebrity chefs, culinary school graduates, people with Michelin stars, and Mitchell Beard Awards. What you did tonight, the way you commanded that kitchen, the quality of the food, the leadership, it's rare. The wine was expensive, the kind Raymond and I had splurged on for anniversaries." I sipped it slowly, tasting layers of flavor I'd never noticed before. I keep waiting for someone to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody does. Starting out. The difference is whether you let that stop you. Katie leaned forward. "I have a proposal. The foundation needs an executive chef for all our events. Guaranteed income. Professional development, your own kitchen eventually. Are you interested?" My phone buzzed. A text from Carl. "Mom, we need to talk. Mariel's pregnant." Stared at the message, understanding immediately what it meant. Mariel's pregnant, so they needed me back. Free child care, free cooking, free labor disguised as family obligation. Bold. Evelyn would have been on her way to their house already. Apologies prepared. Boundaries dissolved. I turned the phone. Face down. "Yes, I told Katie. I'm very interested." The drive home took me past Carl's house. The lights were on. Mariel's car in the driveway next to his. They were probably planning how to use the pregnancy news to lure me back. How to make me feel guilty for choosing my own life over their convenience. Instead of stopping, I drove to the small apartment complex I'd been considering before Raymond died. The one with a view of the park, the one I'd never been able to afford on my Social Security alone. But I wasn't relying on Social Security anymore. The leasing office was closed, but I walked the grounds anyway, imagining my own space. A kitchen where I could develop recipes without anyone dismissing them as dog food. A living room where I could sit without feeling like an intruder. A life that belonged to me. Saturday morning brought a phone call from Mariel. Evelyn, thank God you answered. We have news. Her voice was bright with forced enthusiasm. Congratulations, I said. Carl texted me. We're so excited and we immediately thought, well, we're going to need help. With the baby coming and Carl's work schedule and my morning sickness already starting, I'm sure you'll figure it out. Silence then. We're hoping you'd want to be involved. Really be part of the baby's life. Really be part of the baby's life. Code for provide free childcare while we take credit for raising another human being. I'll be as involved as any grandmother would be. Birthday parties, Christmas visits, the occasional babysitting when I'm available. When you're available, the forced brightness cracked. Evelyn, what's gotten into you? This is your grandchild we're talking about. And it's your child, your responsibility. But we thought after everything that's happened, we thought you'd want to help. We thought you'd want to be needed. Needed, not wanted. Not valued, not respected. Needed like a tool that served a function. Needed, I said, just not by you. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called the leasing office. The apartment was still available. I could move in next month. At afternoon, I drove to the country club to pick up my check from the previous night. The amount made me blink twice. More than I'd made in 3 months of Social Security. Real money for real work. Compensation that reflected skill rather than family obligation. As I walked to my car, I noticed a familiar figure by tennis courts. Carl in his weekend clothes, racket in hand. He'd probably had a standing reservation here for years. Membership paid by his job or Mariel's father. The kind of casual privilege he'd grown up assuming was normal. He saw me before I could turn away. Mom. He jogged over, confusion clear on his face. What are you doing here? Working. Here. Catered. The Ford Foundation dinner last night. His mouth opened then closed. Around us, other club members continued their Saturday activities. Tennis, golf, conversations about stock portfolios and vacation homes. People who lived in the world I just entered. You catered. Here at the country club. 40 guests, pan-seared duck, wild mushroom risotto, chocolate soul. I watched his face process this information. Saw the moment. He realized what it meant. It went very well. Mom, I had no idea you were. Mariel said you hung up on her this morning and we thought you thought wrong. Open my car door. Have to. Oh. I'm meeting with another client this afternoon. Another client. His voice cracked like it had when he was 13 and his voice was changing. Wait. Can we talk? About what? About everything. About Saturday night. About the baby. About whatever's happening with you. I looked at my son, 42 years old, standing on the tennis court of a country club where I just worked as an executive chef, finally realizing that something fundamental had shifted in the universe he'd taken for granted. We can talk, but not today. Today I have work to do. 6 months later I stood in my own kitchen. Not the one I'd shared with Raymond's ghost and Carl's assumptions, but a professional space in the converted warehouse that housed Evelyn's table, my catering company. The morning sun streamed through industrial windows, illuminating stainless steel surfaces and equipment that bore my name on the invoices. The Children's Hospital fundraiser had led to 3 more events. Those had led to corporate contracts, wedding receptions, and a waiting list that stretched into the following spring. Katie Ford had been right about my capabilities. But even she'd been surprised by how quickly word had spread through the networks of people who Appreciated good food prepared by someone who understood that cooking was about more than sustenance. It was about creating moments worth remembering. Chef Evelyn Anna, my sous chef, the same young woman who'd worked Kenneth's line that desperate night, appeared in the doorway. The Henderson wedding prep is done, and I've got the Ford Foundation gala ingredients ordered for Thursday. My staff, people who worked for me, who looked to me for direction, who called me chef with genuine respect. The transformation still caught me off guard. Sometimes like glimpsing a stranger in mirrors who happened to be living my life. Thank you. What time is the final tasting for the Hart anniversary party? 2 o'clock, Gail Hart specifically requested. You handle it personally. Gail Hart, whose golden anniversary celebration would host 200 guests in the ballroom, where I'd once imagined other people's lives. Now I was creating those experiences, crafting memories for families who valued what I could offer. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 37 years of marriage, I'd cooked for Raymond's business dinners, Carl's milestones, countless family gatherings, where my efforts were background music to other people's conversations. Now strangers paid premium prices for the same skills my family had taken for granted. My phone buzzed. A text from Etsy. Saw the article in the Tribune. So proud of you. The Tribune article. Local chef makes late career mark on regional food scene. A photograph of me in my chef's whites, standing in my kitchen looking like someone who belonged there. The journalist had written about my unconventional path to culinary success, the way I'd built a reputation through word of mouth and consistently exceptional food. She hadn't written about was the price of that success. The family dinners I no longer cooked. The grandchild I saw, occasionally instead of raising. The son who still called but with the careful tone of someone trying to navigate a relationship he no longer understood. Another text appeared. This one from Carl. Can we talk, please? 6 months of similar messages. Not demands or guilt. Trips. He'd learned those didn't work, but careful requests that I'd mostly ignored. Today felt different though. The article had made my transformation official, public, impossible to dismiss. As a temporary phase or grandmother's rebellion. Called him back. Mom, his voice carried surprise, as if he'd given up expecting responses. Thank you for calling. What do you need, Carl? Can I see you at your restaurant? Restaurant. Not the little business or cooking thing he'd used in earlier conversations. Progress of a sort. It's not a restaurant. It's a catering operation. Your catering operation. Can I come see it? An hour later, Carl stood in my kitchen like an alien visiting an unfamiliar planet. He wore a suit from his insurance office, looking overdressed and uncomfortable among the industrial equipment and controlled chaos of lunch prep. This is impressive, he said, watching Anya expertly Bruno's vegetables for afternoon service. I had no idea it was this professional. What did you think it was? I don't know. Maybe like a church kitchen thing or selling food to neighbors. He gestured helplessly at the walk-in cooler, the commercial ranges, the organizational systems that kept 3 simultaneous events running smoothly. Not this. A real business with employees and overhead and profit margins. Something that couldn't be dismissed or minimized. Or reduced to a grandmother's hobby. The Tribune article, he said finally. Said you're booked through next spring through summer. Actually, we just got the Alfie Foundation's annual gala. 800 guests. The number hung between us like evidence of everything he'd failed to understand about what I was capable of. Mom, I owe you an apology. You owe me several. But his voice cracked slightly. I've been thinking about that night, about what I said, about how we treated you. Not just that night, for years. And I'm sorry. Sorry. The word I'd waited 6 months to hear, though. It felt smaller than I'd expected. Apologies were easy. Change was harder. Thank you. Mariel's been struggling with the pregnancy, with adjusting to the idea that you're not just available anymore, available. Even. His apologies carried the assumption that I should have been perpetually accessible, indefinitely useful. Available for what I choose to be available for. No. Get that now. He looked around the kitchen again, taking in the evidence of my choice. The baby's due in March. We were hoping. We'd like you to be part of their life. I intend to be as their grandmother. Just what does that mean exactly? Considered the question seriously. What did it mean to be a grandmother instead of unpaid childcare? What did it mean to love someone while maintaining boundaries? Means birthday parties and Christmas mornings. Means babysitting occasionally when I'm available and want to. It means being someone they can call when they're older and need advice or support. Pause. Means being family without being service. Carl nodded slowly, processing the distinction. And us. What does it mean for us? That depends on you. What do you mean? Do you want a relationship with me, or do you want someone to handle the things you don't want to deal with? The question hung in the air. Between the industrial ovens and prep stations in the space where I'd learned to value my own work. Carl stared at the floor, and I could see him struggling with an answer that might require him to change instead of expecting me to. I want a relationship with you, he said finally. I want to know who you are when you're not taking care of everyone else. Then that's what we'll build. He stayed for another hour, watching me work, asking genuine questions about the business, the clients, the life I'd constructed from the ruins of his casual dismissal. When he left, he hugged me. Not the perfunctory embrace of someone fulfilling an obligation, but the desperate hold of someone who'd almost lost something irreplaceable. That evening I sat in my new apartment, the one with a park view, the one where every piece of furniture belonged to me, reviewing menus for the week ahead. The walls held framed reviews from clients, photographs from events I'd catered, my business license with Evelyn's table written in official font. The phone rang. Mariel's name on the display. Evelyn. Her voice was different. Smaller. Less certain than the commanding tone she'd used when she assumed I had no choice but to comply. Hello, mister, I saw the article. Congratulations. Thank you. I wanted to apologize for how we treated you, for taking you for granted. For not seeing, she trailed off, searching for words. For not seeing you. Not seeing me. The most honest thing she'd ever said about our relationship. Thank you, I said again. The baby's kicking now. Ooh. Would you like to feel it sometime? An olive branch offered tentatively. Not a demand or an assumption, but a request. Like that. Maybe you could come for dinner. Could cook. Mariel offering to cook for me. The world had shifted on its axis. I prefer if you came here, I said, to my apartment. We'll cook. Then I'd like that too. After I hung up, I poured a glass of the expensive wine I could now afford and stood at my window, looking out at the park where couples walked hand in hand, and children played on swings their grandparents had pushed. Somewhere in the city, families were sitting down to dinners they'd cooked themselves or ordered from restaurants where chefs, like me, had spent days perfecting every element. I thought about the woman who'd stood in Carl's kitchen 6 months ago, invisible in her purple dress, watching other people take credit for her work. She felt like someone I'd known once, but outgrown, like clothes that no longer fit. My phone buzzed with a new client inquiry. A Fortune 500 company wanting to discuss their annual shareholders' dinner. 500 guests. Unlimited budget, complete creative control. I smiled and began composing my response. Outside, the sun was setting over a city full of people who would taste my food, remember my menus, know name. The last feast had become the first course of something entirely new, something that belonged completely, irrevocably to me. The old Evelyn would have wondered if she deserved this success, this recognition, this life where her worth was measured in more than service to others. But the woman I'd become, the one who commanded professional kitchens and negotiated corporate contracts and chose her own relationships, she knew the answer. Deserved everything I'd built and everything still to come. The revenge had been perfect. Not cruelty but creation, not destruction but dignity. Not taking anything away from them but finally taking everything for myself. And it had been delicious. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you. Certain than the commanding tone she'd used when she assumed I had no choice but to comply. Hello, Mr. I saw the article. Congratulations. Thank you. I wanted to apologize for how we treated you, for taking you for granted. For not seeing, she trailed off, searching for words. For not seeing you. Not seeing me. The most honest thing she'd ever said about our relationship. Thank you, I said again. The baby's kicking now. Ooh. Would you like to feel it sometime? An olive branch offered tentatively. Not a demand or an assumption but a request. Like that. Maybe you could come for dinner. Could cook. Mariel offering to cook for me. The world had shifted on its axis. I prefer if you came here, I said, to my apartment. We'll cook. Then I'd like that too. After I hung up, I poured a glass of the expensive wine I could now afford and stood at my window, looking out at the park where couples walked hand in hand, and children played on swings their grandparents had pushed. Somewhere in the city, families were sitting down to dinners they'd cooked themselves or ordered from restaurants where chefs like me had spent days perfecting every element. I thought about the woman who'd stood in Carl's kitchen 6 months ago, invisible in her purple dress, watching other people take credit for her work. She felt like someone I'd known once, but outgrown, like clothes that no longer fit. My phone buzzed with a new client inquiry. A Fortune 500 company wanting to discuss their annual shareholders' dinner. 500 guests. Unlimited budget, complete creative control. I smiled and began composing my response. Outside, the sun was setting over a city full of people who would taste my food, remember my menus, know name. The last feast had become the first course of something entirely new, something that belonged completely, irrevocably to me. The old Evelyn would have wondered if she deserved this success, this recognition, this life where her worth was measured in more than service to others. But the woman I'd become, the one who commanded professional kitchens and negotiated corporate contracts and chose her own relationships, she knew the answer. Deserved everything I'd built and everything still to come. The revenge had been perfect. Not cruelty but creation, not destruction but dignity. Not taking anything away from them but finally taking everything for myself. And it had been delicious. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. The story continues in the next chapter in the next linked video. But first, I need you to subscribe to join the family as we are looking forward to hit our first 10,000 subscribers target, and feel free to share your story in the comments. You matter, your voice does too.